Welcome to New American Mythos, where old stories are kindled like firelight, and we gather round to remember the tales that shaped us. This season, we've walked the haunted lanes of the American Northeast, listened to the whispers in the woods, felt the unease of a young nation wrestling with memory, morality, and meaning. This is our final episode of Season 1, unless you are a patron, in which case 2 bonus episodes await you right now. Tonight, we want to provide some concluding reflections on the season. Section 1. Why these stories? Well, the answer to that is because the people who told them believed history was sacred. Every step into the wilderness was a step into providence or peril. They were covenant people, exiles turned settlers, carrying the burden of becoming something new, something good. But they were also haunted by the land they didn't yet understand, haunted by the Europe they left behind, haunted by failure, by judgment, and by longing. So, their myths became moral warnings. Their ghosts were not merely to scare, but to remember. To remember that sin has consequences, that vows matter, and that time does not always return what it takes. These tales were not mere entertainment. They were memory keepers, ways of passing down spiritual inheritance, of teaching the next generation what not to forget. And that's what makes them powerful still, because America remains haunted, not just by injustice or failure, but by forgetfulness, by the loss of a shared story. Section 2. Reflections on the stories. Take Rip Van Winkle, for example. A man who escapes his duties, wanders into the Catskills, and wakes to find 20 years gone. To the early Republic, it was a whimsical tale of time lost. To us, it feels like a parable of distraction. Rip is beloved, yes, but he is also useless. He returns to find his family aged, his village changed, his place erased. Irving is asking, what happens when men withdraw from responsibility, when they seek comfort instead of calling? That question still matters, because in our own distracted age, full of glowing screens and vanishing attention, we too risk becoming a nation of sleepers. Or consider the legend of Sleepy Hollow, a story of folklore and fear, pride and downfall. Ichabod Crane is undone as much by his imagination as by any phantom, but the story endures because it shows how a community's shared fears can take on a life of their own. A horseman may or may not ride, but the rumor, the whisper, the legend, that becomes real enough to shape lives. Are we not living in our own Sleepy Hollow, a culture where suspicion spreads faster than truth, where narratives harden into reality, where the line between myth and fact grows ever thinner? Then there is the Gray Champion. Unlike Rip or Ichabod, here we meet a figure of strength, a solitary man who steps into the street and halts an empire's soldiers. Hawthorne sets it in Puritan Boston, but it is really about memory, the idea that Providence may raise up a defender in every age. It's a story of courage in the face of tyranny, but it also forces us to ask, would we recognize such a figure now? Or have we grown so cynical, so suspicious of conviction, that we no longer can tell the difference between posturing and true courage? In The Devil and Tom Walker, greed drives the tale. A man sells his soul not for knowledge or power, but for money. It's satire, yes, but it is also judgment. The devil doesn't need to tempt us with grand promises, just with enough to fatten our barns and line our pockets. That story feels startlingly modern. In an age of endless consumerism, Tom Walker is alive and well. We are still selling our souls, only now the bargains are digital, economic, cultural. The question remains, what is worth the trade? And the Wendigo. Here, finally, is a story born not in Europe, but in the wilderness itself, a myth of hunger, corruption, and the terror of nature turned against us. Blackwood retells it for the audience of his day, but the ancient fear is clear. When men give in to appetite, they become less than human. The Wendigo devours not only bodies, but souls. In our age, we too are consumed by addiction, by excess, by the endless scroll of wants. The Wendigo has not vanished. It has only changed its form. Then Hawthorne again, The Minister's Black Veil and Young Goodman Brown, two stories of secrecy and suspicion. In one, a minister hides his face, and in doing so, unsettles the entire town. In the other, a young husband ventures into the woods and loses his trust in mankind forever. Together, these two warn of a nation where hidden sin festers and suspicion corrodes the community. And here, perhaps, the mirror of our own day is the most clear. For we live in an age of mistrust, of hidden lives, of curated faces, of public images concealing private despair. Goodman Brown's paranoia, Pastor Hooper's veil, they are not relics. They are us. Section 3. What Still Remains. The ghosts of these tales don't only accuse. Some of their spirit still lingers with us, hidden but enduring. For instance, there is the longing for meaning. Early Americans believed every action carried eternal weight. Today, that conviction is muted, but the hunger for meaning persists. It surfaces in art, in frustrations, in community, in our restless search for something beyond ourselves. Along with that, there is still the weight of conscience. Hawthorne's characters wrestle with hidden sin and hypocrisy. While we use different words now, and while we try to bury it as deeply as possible, conscience still presses in the unease beneath our distractions, in the quiet knowledge that image and reality rarely match. On top of this, there is the memory of covenant. Villages once bound themselves with sacred vows. Families and churches carried promises that outlasted hardship. That thread, though frayed, has not vanished. We still see it when communities sacrifice for each other, when marriages endure, when ordinary people rise to help in crisis. The covenant spirit remains. We also remember a reverence for the land. Not the idolatrous eco-craze that we see now, but something older. The wilderness humbled and terrified the first settlers, but it also stirred awe. We feel that same awe in our parks, in our mountain trails, in the quiet longing for retreat from noise and screen. The haunted imagination of the Northeast still whispers through the forests, "The world is bigger than us." And last, there is the hope for providence. The Gray Champion embodies the belief that God raises up defenders in times of need. That hope has never entirely faded. Even now, in an age of cynicism, people long for true courage and for providence to speak again. So we see that what lingers from the haunted Northeast is not only fear or suspicion or corruption, but also hope, covenant, conscience, and awe. These are like coals under ash, waiting to be stirred back into flame. Section 4. What it means for us. These stories remind us that American identity was never only about politics or territory. It was, at root, a spiritual question. What kind of people are we? What do we remember? What do we hope for? And this is where the danger lies. We are brilliant innovators, but poor rememberers. We've built dazzling technology, but we struggle to hold on to the stories that gave life meaning. Without shared myths, society unravels, mistrust grows, and cynicism spreads. And like the haunted figures in these tales, we risk becoming a people who have forgotten ourselves. But there is hope. The stories remain. They are still whispering from the old forests, still echoing in the haunted halls of New England towns. They remind us that freedom is fragile without virtue, that trust is precious, that memory is sacred. And by listening, really listening, we take the first step towards reclaiming what was lost. If Season 1 has shown us anything, it is this. America's soul has always been contested ground, but the ghosts we keep and the stories we choose to remember can guide us forward. Looking ahead. Though Season 1 is finished, our journey isn't over. Season 2 begins next January. It's called Echoes of Albion, and it reaches back across the sea to the deep roots of our mythic inheritance. We will follow heroes and saints, dragons and dreamers, from Beowulf to the Fairy Queen, from the Green Chapel to the Cross in the Sky. And we will ask, what kind of faith built the world that we left? What did we inherit? And what must we recover? And in the weeks between this season and the beginning of the next, we'll be releasing some mini-episodes that document our progress, give insight into the stories, or tease out some of the themes that we're going to unpack. Hopefully these will help fill the time between now and January and will inspire and prepare you for Season 2. The Northeast was our first mythic soil. Its forests still echo with the first questions we asked as a people. What is good? What is evil? What kind of home can we build on holy ground? We may have forgotten the old stories, but they have not left us, and perhaps by listening, we will begin to remember. Until next time, keep your lamp lit.